Welcome to today's session at Evolve Beyond Borders, and I'm so excited to tell you all about today's session. We're in a studio in London, and we have an audience with us today, and if everyone wants to clap just to prove that we are all here. We're in the heart of London, in the West End, on a very cold day, but I'm so excited to have everyone with us today to join us. So just to introduce our next session, we have a jointly presented team from Lace Partners. We have Chris Horton, who is the Director of Lace Partners. We have Chris Kirby, who is the Payroll Transformation Leader at Lace Partners, and Rebecca Addison, the Senior Manager at, guess who? Lace Partners. I'm so excited today because they're going to present on global work and the top 10 predictions for 2023 and beyond, and maybe I'll put a bet on to see what will actually happen, so that'll be really exciting. And also there is actually a digital version of the ebook will be made available to everyone, and there's also it's printed in everyone's goodie bags that are with us today. So we're looking forward to today's session, and it will be starting shortly.
Evolve Beyond Borders is proud to introduce Chris Horton, Chris Kirby, and Rebecca Addison. Rebecca Addison, Senior Manager at Lace Partners, has extensive experience of the entire HRIS technology implementation lifecycle. Chris Norton, Director at Lace Partners, brings together his passion for people and technology to help organizations improve their decision-making. Chris Kirby, Payroll Transformation Leader at Lace Partners, has over 2 decades of experience in senior operational and consultant roles. Let's welcome Rebecca, Chris, and Chris as they share their insights on global work, top 10 predictions for 2023 and beyond.
So I've been asked to pick up the ball and look into the ball to look at future predictions. I'm normally a bit more data-based rather than looking into glass. So I'm going to try and make sure that our predictions are more based on things that we think are fact-based. Great to be here on behalf of Lace Partners. A big thank you to Melanie and to Sam from Neeyamo. It's really great to be here, and I'm even happier to be here with my colleagues Chris and Rebecca. So I think looking at it from an HR perspective, HR is in a unique position where we can really show an incredible amount of value. If we look back, 2020, the global pandemic, we've had, ongoing Brexit, issues that we need to sort out. We've had the war in the Ukraine. We're now looking at a recession, whether that's physically started yet or soon to manifest. We've got cost of living crisis. We've got lots and lots of things. And if you look at it, there's a huge amount of uncertainty. There's a huge amount of uncertainty that's going to continue. In times of uncertainty, I think HR can really look to focus on the areas where there is certainty. And to me, that's really focusing on some areas or pillars of things that we can do. As part of our predictions, we're going to talk through those key pillars and really to bring out those further points. The key things that we're going to focus on today. Primarily, it will be first 5, and then we'll touch on the other 5 in less detail. So the first one is around hybrid working. Melanie's already alluded to different factors around that, talking about digital nomads, talking about the difference between what many C-suite and leaders think versus what employees think. We're going to touch on people analytics. We're going to touch on employee experience. We're going to touch on skills, and really talk about HR tech consolidation. Now, there's a whole range of other things, whether it's ESG, so environment, social, and governance, loads of other things that are interesting. I think we are at a true turning point where we're really looking to redefine the workplace. We're redefining the workplace in a way that we've never seen before. And I think changes are incredibly quick. I think they're incredibly fast. And I think we need to focus on what are the skills, what are the ways in which we work, what are the ways in which we set up workplaces to make us be able to do that. I think the interesting thing as we go into a global recession, you will see CEOs, CFOs, and we've already seen it, whether it's at Amazon, Microsoft today announced 11,000 people being laid off, etc. I think you will see a very traditional view of HR, which is about headcount and cost cutting. I would challenge that we need to be a lot more really go-getting and try and think of different ways in which we can redeploy workforces, in which we can look at things like skills, in which we can do different things. I'm going to touch on hybrid working as the first topic. So, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally Australian. Was half of my family convict stock, so sent to Australia for stealing a horse. Other side, free settlers. I think the key thing to me is, I've had the great opportunity throughout my career to work in 20 different countries. I've had lots of different experience. I think the nice thing with hybrid working is lots of people now are having the chance to have a similar career as me, but not have to necessarily do the 4,000 flights that I've done in my life. So I think there's lots of great things. I think there's huge challenges at the moment with flexible and hybrid working. I think the key thing to me is I think lots of organisations are starting to say we need to bring employees back, that yes, it's been an interesting experiment, but actually having people at work is better than not having them, than allowing them to be flexible and work at different locations or work in their home. I think that the data that is out there is not necessarily supporting that. So my view is very much we need to look at what are the key things that need to happen from a work perspective, what's the type of work that needs to be done, where does it need to be done, and can things be done at home versus does it make sense to be happen more in the office. I don't think there is any great value in forcing people to come back, and we've seen lots of different companies drive that way and then end up with significant resignations or people actually very disengaged. And I hate the term, but it fits in this situation, quiet quitting, where people are almost just doing what they need to until they find the next job. I think on the opposite end of the scale, some people are saying that hybrid working and working from home is meaning that they have less work-life balance, that they are working longer hours. I think really the key to me is thinking through what's the best way a team can work, what's the best way employees can have chats with their line managers and really understand, okay, these are the key things that we need to achieve. These are the key ways in which we can do it. I think there's lots of different challenges, and I'm sure all of us have experienced those challenges with having different workforces. So some people at home, some people at work. In this situation, we've got a live audience here. We've got lots of people around the world online. It's a very similar thing. How do we make sure we're catering to all the different workforces? How do we make sure we've got the right skill set as leaders and line managers? But also, I think from a data perspective, how do we make sure that whatever our definition of productivity is within the organisation, that we're actually using that to make the decisions as to where people need to work. So whether they need to work physically in an office or physically at home. Now, of course, there's different organisations, and whether that's in hospitality, whether that's in medical care, there's certain organisations where we have to have people physically present because that's the nature of either the product or the service that they provide. I think there is definitely different things that we should look at in that case. And that's more around flexible working and how can you actually provide different ways that people can work, can have flexibility around the different things that they need to do. I think that's hybrid working.
Are you segueing?
I'm segueing. So I'm a great believer that that people data is fundamental. So would love to jump now to people analytics.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. So I'm going to talk a bit about people analytics, which is something we're seeing as a major sort of growth area. And the importance of people analytics is becoming increasingly on sort of C-suite and leadership radars. And I think businesses that are doing it well are using their people analytics to really drive business outcomes. But we're seeing a lot of organisations that are kind of stuck in the weeds, still stuck in that kind of area of having to use their people analytics just to produce those kind of monthly reports and those weekly reports that people are expecting to see. So at Lace Partners, we carried out a study recently and we spoke to over 30 organisations, either sort of people that are practitioners in people analytics or businesses that help, or technology that supports people analytics. We spoke to them to try and understand what are your key challenges, what are the problems that you're facing right now, but what are your aspirations for the future? So what is that future of work around people analytics and what are we expecting to see coming on the horizon? And there were some really key themes that came out from everyone, and they were the same themes across the suite really, and what you'd expect to see. So the sort of first of those was really around data management and data reporting, and again it's that kind of aspect of this, how do we move beyond just reporting into true analytics? So at the moment, you know, this kind of monthly producing the suite of reports that keeps going out every month, and how much time is spent by teams building those reports. We found about an 80-20 mix of people analytics teams just doing standard reporting as opposed to actual true analytics, about 20% of their time. And one of the guys that we spoke to was really interesting, and he kind of took over a people analytics function. And when he got in, he found that, you know, his team were running these huge, vast numbers of reports every month and just generating them out over email. Okay, send them out to the business. Okay, yep, we've done our job, we've ticked our box, we've sent the reports out. And he was just like, you know what, let's just stop. Let's just not do it for 1 month and see what happens and see if anyone cares. And he didn't. And they stopped sending the reports out. And you know what? No one said anything. Not a word. And this isn't necessarily a course of action I'd recommend, but the point is data should be relevant and it should be timely. It's about thinking about how, you know, as a manager, when you sit there thinking, okay, I want to see what my team are doing, I want to run some reporting on my workforce, you want to know what they're doing right now. You don't want to know what they were doing 2 weeks ago when that report dropped into your email inbox. So it's how can we build that sort of democratization of data across the business so that people can access the data when they want it and when they need it. And that's the sort of stuff that we need to see in the future of work and see people building as we go forward. And of course, you know, with HR data, it comes with its own challenges. So you've obviously got, you know, high levels of personal data in there. So you've got your GDPR risks and your data protection risks. So you have to think really carefully about how that's shared across the business. So it's about making sure that that's done safely and securely. So you've got that trust element in it, but also making sure that you've got the right skills within your leaders and your HRBPs, for example, to kind of take that data and interpret it properly rather than just kind of, again, just kind of keep pulling on the reports. A couple of other sort of key themes that came out were around technology, of course. So what kind of technologies you have in the workplace. So you obviously your HRIS and your payroll systems, and how do you make the most of that and get the data out of that so you can actually utilise that for the business. But then also thinking about, you know, specific analytics technology that might support that. So do you have Power BI, for example, to kind of help with some of your Tableau or something like that to help you with your reporting functionality. But I think, you know, overall, in terms of people analytics, we're absolutely expecting this to be an area that keeps growing in businesses. It's really, really critical for businesses to start utilising it, to start bringing the people analytics into play with other analytics across the business, and really start to upskill the people function with analytics. And that's what we expect to see going forward into the future, is an increase in that capability and capacity around people analytics. And again, the importance of it to help drive those business outcomes as the business goes forward. Over to you, Chris.
Me, yeah. I guess creating my own segue, I think, you know, one of the things that people analytics is critical in is sort of helping define employee experience and the requirements around employee experience and what the workforce are asking for. I think in terms of a trend and a prediction, employee experience has become far more important over the last, however many years you want to say, you know, the last 5-6 years. It was already trending that way, but I think going forward, it's playing such a critical role and will continue to play a critical role in any transformation. You know, we always talk about things like HR-led, IT-led programs. There's actually an argument for an element of each program being people-led and employee-led. Within that, there's several things I just wanted to cover today. One being engagement, which is an ever-evolving, I wanted to get the word evolving, but it's an ever-evolving picture. So the way that people want to be engaged, the way that people respond to engagement changes rapidly and changes all the time. And all the stuff that Melanie's spoken about, that Chris introduced today, they're all factors to it. People want to be engaged differently now to what they were maybe 3 years ago. That's a picture that's not going to go away. I think the remote workforce, the hybrid workforce is a massive part of that. I think it's not just a challenge, though. I think it's also an opportunity, because when we talk about evolving beyond borders as well, see, I've got the whole strap line in. When we talk about evolving beyond borders, if you can come up with an effective engagement model that really grabs employees' attention, grabs their buy-in, makes them feel part of a team in a remote and hybrid workforce, essentially you've de facto created a model that works globally. You know, yes, of course, there's the local, characteristics that might be different culturally, things like that. But generally, you've created a model that can help bind your workforce together beyond borders. I think another angle is well-being, and there's been a lot of conversation around well-being, particularly over the pandemic. And I think the default position, especially from a payroll point of view, has been pay on demand, and that's clearly a huge enabler for employees, especially in certain workforces, certain countries, certain industries. But I think well-being is a lot broader than that, and I think the focus on it is going to increase. And I also think the scope of it will increase. I think we're talking about engaging the full employee. We're talking about the well-being of them as a person, not just an employee. So when we think about that, and you look at statistics around, depending on which studies you look at, 50-60% of the workforce are not financially literate, for example. Really, it's that, there's that coaching angle is a massive opportunity. It's something that employees really need. And again, when we talk about global workforces, region and location is a massive part of that as well, because it's up and down depending on where people are based. I think the third thing I wanted to cover is around development, and this is something that's really very recently has come up a lot more, I'd say over the last year or so, on a lot of the companies I've been working with. There's been a standard message from all of them, which is both internally within HR and payroll, but also out in the business. People don't feel like there's this development route. Where is my expansion? How do I get to that next level? And I think this is relevant very much for payroll as well. And Melanie touched on earlier around the skills required once you get promoted. They are a different set of skills, and you need to know how to engage with C-suite. You need to know how to engage with different stakeholders, and it's a different thought process. And I think development and employees' thirst for development is something that's going to just keep growing. I think especially as there's this remote workforce, hybrid workforce, where potentially they feel a bit more disconnected. They're focused more on themselves and how they're developing, rather than just turning up to work and working with this team every day. Lastly, I couldn't not touch on technology, at least in some way. I think I've called this many things in the last few years, and the journey to the cloud was my favourite strapline over the last decade, or not, as the case may be. And I think we're still on that, and there's a lot of companies that aren't there. I forget the numbers. I think it was something like 50%, 40% of companies still haven't migrated to the cloud, right? But that's going to keep going, and technology will evolve past the cloud, and society and employees will expect something different. I think we've touched on, and Samuel, I think earlier, talked about blockchain and velocity, I think it was. That clearly, from an employee perspective, from a society perspective, is the next big thing, or the new thing. It's where we're going. It's important to decouple that, I think, from cryptocurrency, right? People think they're one and the same too often, and it gets a bad rep. But fundamentally, when we think about GDPR, when we think about all of the access issues, things like that we see in payroll especially, but HR as well, blockchain, where employees are owning their own data and granting you access only when you need it, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? So I think that's a significant trend. That's somewhere where we're heading. But I think broadly, before I hand back over to Bex, is fundamentally employee experience. It's always been there. It may not have been called that. It's gone through different guises. but the emphasis on it is so strong now and will be getting stronger. And as I said, the most drastic example is it just becoming a complete work stream or taking over a program where entire HR and payroll transformations are delivered for the benefit of the employee experience.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about skills, actually, because this is another area where we're really seeing that growth and that sort of shift of mindset amongst businesses. And there was a recent Gartner study which measured, I think it was 80% of employees and 92% of managers feel unprepared for the future of work. And this led to CEOs, or 60% of CEOs of the businesses that they looked at saying that skills was going to be their major focus for the year. So that is that kind of shift of like saying, okay, let's switch from job-based work to skills-based work. But what does that really mean? Do any of us actually understand what that shift means and how it kind of changes the way that we work on a day-to-day basis? And I think it is quite a fundamental shift in the way that we work in the business. So if you think about a recruitment process, for example, historically you might look at a CV and say, on a job-based role, okay, what kind of education has that person got? Have they got a 2-1 from a reputable university? Have they worked in this industry before? Have they done this job before? So it's very much looking at that kind of past experience, that job experience to get to this point. Whereas if you move to a skills-based organisation, it's saying, okay, have they got the right skills to deliver this role? And it's kind of a very different focus. So you might say, for example, as a project manager, okay, have they done project management? It doesn't matter what industry they've done it in. It doesn't matter necessarily what kind of project they've managed, but they've got those core skills around stakeholder management and communication. And so those skills are transferable into that different role. But it is a massive, huge mindset shift from the kind of job-based approach that businesses take at the moment. And I think there was a Deloitte study, recently, where they were talking about 90% of businesses were going to make this shift towards this skills sort of based approach as they go through into the future. And no organisations so far have cracked the code on skills. It's a really difficult challenge, but there are some organisations that are leading the way out there at the moment. And there are, we did a study on it recently again, and we kind of looked at what are those kind of leading factors that are helping organisations build their skills ontology and how are they making that shift over. And there's some really key trends on that. And I'll just cover a couple of them because we're going to run out of time. But it's around making sure that skills agenda is led from the top. So it needs to be part of the business strategy. It needs to be business-led, not just HR-led. So you kind of need to bring the whole workforce into it. Lots of these leading organisations are setting up talent intelligence teams. So teams that can identify where the talent and where those skills are needed in the business and can pull those skills from both either externally or internally within the business and make sure that those skills are in the right place within the organisation. It's about taking, an iterative approach to it, I think, not trying to do it all at once for the whole organisation. So pick business units which would work really well with skills and say, okay, let's try it there first, let's give it a go, see if it works, and kind of learn the lessons from that approach and apply them across the business as you go forward. And all of this has to be underpinned absolutely fundamentally by organisations adopting a lifelong learning approach. Okay, it needs to be part of the organisation and led from the top. That employees are empowered to learn, that are empowered to build these skills, and it's not just about completing a module on an e-learning course. This is about actually building those skills. How do we apply them into the workforce? How do you make sure that those skills are being developed and applied throughout? So we absolutely expect this area around skills to see much more development and much more shift as kind of organisations go forward and start very much making this huge mindset shift from job roles to skills. And that actually relates very nicely to Chris's topic, which is about technology. As we move back to that, all of that has to, of course, be supported by HR technology and all the things that sit underneath that to make sure that it's supported and empowered. And that comes from both your HRIS, but then technologies such as Degreed and Edcast, which can help you build your skills into the future.
So before I jump into the last topic that we want to talk about in detail, and which is really the consolidation of HR technology and what are the key trends that we're seeing happening there. I think there's a couple of interesting points that I would add, across the different subjects that we've talked about. I think as we have a real focus on people, human beings, as part of the employee experience, we really need to make sure we're doing things where we're having a dialogue, where we're listening, where we're putting in things in processes so that we're constantly getting feedback on what we're doing. And I think that's fundamental, and we're seeing that happen a lot. I think the other really interesting thing from a skills perspective is almost taking it up a level and looking at whether it's 5 years' time, whether it's closer in the midterm 3 years, or even if it's the next 12 to 18 months, is really thinking about, to succeed, to be here in 10 years' time, what's the skill set that I need as an organisation? What are the gaps in that skill set? And what are the ways in which I can actually work to close that gap? And I think the interesting thing, we've seen over the pandemic, many people retire early, but there's talent pools that we're looking at now. There's an article that we've done recently around retirement, and it's really looking at people who've retired early but might still be interested in working, so that might be another talent pool that we need to look at. So I think there needs to be, from both a people analytics perspective with strategic workforce planning, organisations need to get better at that, need to get better at having the discussion around what is the skill set that as an organisation we need to have, what's our current skill set, and do we really have a grasp on what those key skills are? But more importantly, how do we actually solve those problems? Where are the pools of talent that we've got? Or what kind of initiatives do we need to do to develop the talent internally? And I think there's huge focus at the moment. I know amongst all of our clients, the discussions are much more around internal mobility, really trying to drive, find out and have a view of the existing workforce, the existing skills, etc. Jumping to the HR consolidation of technology, I think really the key there is much less spend, and that's been going down in last year, and I can see that happening this year. I think there's also a broader dissatisfaction that hasn't been seen in past years. So, whether you're the Workday, SuccessFactors, ADP, Ceridian, Oracle, whatever the companies are, there has been a definite dissatisfaction or a dropping in the level of satisfaction that's happened. It's still at a reasonable level, but it's way less than what it was in the past. I think the interesting thing, we're seeing different companies develop new software, and that's typically, not surprisingly, in a couple of key areas, and these key areas will remain hot. The first is around employee experience, and there's a huge number of different companies that are providing that kind of functionality. I think the key thing that blew my mind, the average company has 80 different employee-facing systems. Now, can you imagine running your personal life where you had 80 different interactions, whether it was for banking, childcare, whatever the thing was? You would not find that acceptable. So we really need to consolidate that. I think the other two areas are around capability and capability systems. So really in the learning space, making sure that things are that there's a way in which we can build and develop better skills. And then the last is around market intelligence. And then, so a couple of other areas that we've been really looking at. ESG, still a hot topic. So looking at from a purpose of the company, are we looking after the environment? Are we thinking through and having purpose in what we do? Are we making sure that our ways of working, our practices are critical and true? I think the fundamental thing to me, there's a real talent war in getting good ESG people. I think that will continue. So my argument would be the more companies invest and develop internally, I think is absolutely a way to go. I think there's a number of different trends that are happening across the board. I think we touched on briefly about productivity in the hybrid working space. I think there's a definite mismatch between key leaders and employees, but I think through people analytics and modelling and data is the only way you can really close that gap. Thank you both for your time today. Appreciate the opportunity from Neeyamo. Melanie, I think you're doing a brilliant job, and I love your red jacket, so keep up the good work.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to Chris and Chris. I only just realised there's two Chris's on stage, and Rebecca. It was really interesting and a bit sad that I was still surprised about the people going to the cloud. You know, businesses, the cloud is still so low. So again, I'd like to see what happens in a couple of years, and your other predictions are fantastic. So thank you so much. Thank you, and we hope to see you here next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.